गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गनर शॉट। गनर शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। आज जब मुइजू के मालदीव्स में के पार्लियामेंट के अंदर मुक्का मुक्की हो रहा है, हम इसके बारे में बात करने वाले हैं और यहाँ भारत का क्या ऑप्शन है उसके बारे में चर्चा करेंगे। और ये कासा वेबिनार मेरे ख्याल में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण होगा और एक्चुअली ऑन टाइम है। और इसी के लिए मेरे साथ बात करने के लिए और पूरे स्पीकर्स को इंट्रोड्यूस करने के लिए मेरे साथ हैं जनरल गौतम मूर्ति सर। ओवर टू यू।
Thank you. Good evening, Jai Hind, ladies, gentlemen. On behalf of Team CASA, I, General Gautam Murthy, who's the Managing Director of the Current and Strategic Affairs Forum, I welcome you all to this important webinar, our 49th so far on Muizu's Maldives options for India. Ever since Muizu has been elected as president of Maldives on an anti-India plank, he's been in the news for all the wrong reasons. He came to power riding on the opposition's India Out campaign and defeated President Ibu Soli, who was viewed as friendly to India. Very briefly, I'll just touch upon following the derogatory remarks made by the three Maldivian ministers against our Prime Minister after his visit to Lakshadweep to promote tourism there. A diplomatic row erupted with the Maldivian government distancing itself from the comments and by suspending those ministers. Despite the government's prompt action and appeals to avoid visiting the tourism-dependent island nation as a vacation destination, started flooding the Indian social media. While there was a spate of cancellations of reservations, the Maldivian President Mohamed Muizu appealed to China to intensify their efforts to send more tourists to the country. In fact, President Muizu, in his address in the Fujian province, termed China as the island's nation's closest ally. Abhi fast forward kar dijiye. Yesterday, there was chaos in their parliament. Members were roughing up each other. Visuals flooded social media. The main opposition party, the Maldivian Democratic Party, which holds a majority, has today gathered enough signatures to submit a motion to impeach President Mohamed Muizu. In the meanwhile, there's a Chinese spy ship that is headed there after Sri Lanka said no to a port call. Ye same ship, it turned off its automatic identification system and was running dark when it was intercepted by Indonesia 2 weeks ago. What all this means to India, and to discuss what India's options are, we have a very distinguished panel. Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, PVSM, AVSM, SM. As you know, he's retired after being our Director General Military Operations. He was absolutely responsible for talks with his counterpart in Pakistan, and his advisory skills in the strategic arena have played an inseparable part in designing and implementing numerous policies for the Indian Army. General Bhatia has done all the mandatory courses of the Army, very highly distinguished officer, and you would have seen him in a number of webinars and discussions. You must have seen him on the news channel. He speaks on wide-ranging subjects, and in fact, he was the brigade major when we launched the operation in Maldives to free it from the terrorists who had actually captured the government there. Welcome to this webinar, General Bhatia, and we look forward to hearing your views.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ambassador Gurjit Singh, who you know who retired as India's ambassador to Germany. Currently, he's an honorary professor of international relations at IIT Indore. He has a long and distinguished career in diplomacy and is an expert on the ASEAN and the African Union. As also a deputy permanent representative of India to UNEP and UN Habitat. We welcome you, Ambassador Gurjit, and we look forward to what you have to say about this present imbroglio. Third speaker is Brigadier Dahiya, Sena Medal, who served as DDG at the IDSA. He is again an Indian Army veteran, a wonderful officer, distinguished in every course that he has done. He's been a military diplomat too, and he was India's defense attaché to Turkey, Syria, and Lebanon. He was with the Indian military training team in Bhutan, and he has again done all the mandatory courses, and not only done them, he has excelled in them. A wonderful officer, and we look forward to hearing his views on Maldives. Moderator for this webinar is none other than General Shankar, who needs no introduction. This gunner shot, we thank him for hosting this webinar. His blog is widely read and seen across 80 countries, has over 14,300 subscribers, gets an average of 2,000 hits per day. And thank you, General Shankar, for hosting this webinar. It's over to you for the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for that introduction, and a very good evening to all the esteemed panelists. It's my honor once again to moderate this important session on Maldives. Uh, while there's a lot of action going on in the Parliament of Maldives, and parliamentarians are kicking each other, impeachment going on, and all that, we are not here to discuss their parliamentary tactics or their political actions. Yeah, political actions to the extent how they uh, affect the geopolitical situation and India's options. We are here to talk about largely the geopolitical and the geostrategic issues and India's options, because Maldives is a important neighbor of ours. How important it is, I'll just mention through a set of slides which I've put together. Look at this island. This island is the island of Gan. We probably many of us have not heard of it. And look at the airport out there. There's an airport out there called Gan, which is not Malé. All of us know Malé has an airport, yes, but Gan also has an airport. Now, where is Gan? Gan is part of the Addu Atoll. And if you look at this map closely, you will see that this Addu Atoll is connected by a roadway all through, right? It is very strategic in nature. The atoll by itself and the bay, I understand, is you know pretty deep, and it serves as a good base. It is for everyone's information that Gan Island was sought after by USSR when it was there, and at that time in 80s, USSR was prepared to pay $1 million to the Maldives government, right, to put it as a base. Right? If it is so important, where is it? And that enhances the strategic value of Maldives. If I zoom out further, where the red dot is gone, and the set of Maldives is further to the north, and to the south is the Digaguasha. Same thing. If you look at it zoomed out, you see how strategically that red dot is in the center of the Indian Ocean, right? And if you put the line from north to south on the Chagos archipelago on which Maldives sit, to the north, the yellow dot is Lakshadweep, whose southernmost island is Minicoy, and to the south, the other yellow dot is Digogarcia. And this atoll sits, Gan and Malay sit on this Chagos archipelago. For those of you who don't understand Chagos archipelago, it's a deep underwater mountain range which has very few passages, and international shipping either from west to east or east to west have to go through these passages, either between the gaps between the Maldives and the Lakshadweep, or the gaps between Diego Garcia and Maldives, that is gone. If I zoom out, I put it in a different thing. You see the shipping lane. Generally, I've drawn it from Bab al Mandeb to Malacca. It goes absolutely through the Maldives. So that is where the strategic importance lies. And if I look at it, you see a whole lot of dots in this. Let me explain these dots to you. The blue dots, right? Either it's Bombay Visakhapatnam, Cochin, or Minicoy, or for that matter, Andaman Nicobar and Agaliga are either Indian bases or likely Indian bases. You look at the green dots, Diego Garcia, Djibouti, Oman, and Qatar. These are all bases of USA. Now, in this, you look at the red dots at Djibouti, at Kaikafu, which is likely to come up, Hambantota, Gwadar, and down south in Malay. And if Malay and Gan go to China, what happens? Then you find China sitting in the middle of all transit points. And if a base comes up here, you can imagine what will be the geostrategic equations all over. And to again put it in perspective, if I zoom out further, these are the lanes, the main lanes. And you see just south of India, where you see the thickest part of these lanes are ocean lanes, sits Maldives. So Maldives has tremendous strategic importance, which is largely understood by most, but not fully. And in this kind of a scenario, you have this political shenanigans going and a swing by Maldives to China and a certain amount of radicalism taking place. It's a complex scenario. Many people have told me, oh, why bother about Maldives? It's such a small place. We should be focused more on China and Pakistan and Red Sea and all that. Forget Maldives and forget Muizu. It doesn't happen that way. And why it doesn't happen that way, what our options are, and everything, we have three experts to talk about it. All I'll request from all of you, sirs, is take 5, 6 minutes each or 7 minutes to give your overall overview of the whole story, and then I will go over a second round where I'll pose a specific question on each aspect to you, on what you have spoken, from what you have spoken. First, I'd request General Vinod Bhatia, sir, your views and your intervention, please. Over to you.
Jai Hind and good evening. Thank you very much, CASA. Thank you, Dana Short. Thank you, Gautam and Shankar. Thrilled to be on the same panel with Ambassador Gurjit and my old colleague, Brigadier Rala. It's a very interesting subject. It's a very current one, something which is bothering uh, not only India but Indians also, is the Maldives situation. Uh, we need to understand why. Need to understand it's not is it Maldives, it's China, it's China and Maldives. Uh, the way I see it unfolding is that Maldives is on the way to becoming another client state of China, much like Pakistan. China's containment of India is going to be even more effective with the base at Maldives. As also Maldives, like you rightly said, gives China, it protects and projects China's interest because 60% of Chinese uh, oil and shipping passes through the strait, and you have given the geography, and a national stance is dictated by the geography. So Maldives is, though very a small state, otherwise it's become very important. Ghana is an old British base also. It's got a proper airfield, unlike Alule. Alule is not much of an airfield. Ghana has got space, unlike Alule, which is an airfield in Mali. Right. So when you talk of, I'll cut it very short. Shankar, we discussed this earlier also on the CASA platform, also on your platform also. Uh, India's China challenge based on the 4D strategy, right? The 4D was defend the LAC, dominate the oceans, tough diplomacy, find to balance other nations, and the last was deny space in the neighborhood. Now, that is, I think, denying space in neighborhood we have not achieved. Something we need to really review is our neighborhood first policy. It really doesn't seem to be working. Whether it is Sri Lanka, to some extent, yes. Maldives, definitely not. And then we come to Bangladesh, we come to Nepal, Bhutan also, the boundary talks are on, Myanmar going the China way. So we really have to look at it because the neighborhood is very important, Sagar and neighborhood world. A region responsible resurgent India is doing very well in the strategic neighborhood, but extended neighborhood. But are we doing so well? Are we protecting our interests in the immediate neighborhood? I don't think so. I think we got to look inwards, and that is one of the options. I think we have to really look inwards and look at hard facts. Soft power can take you somewhere. Hard power can take you somewhere, but smart power, which we need to use. Unlike China, of course, China is using sharp power, and China is going to, it's the China's three strategies are military position, what is trying on the India-China border or the LAC, South China Sea, Taiwan. The second strategy is debt trap, and that is where Maldives has been will face it in the near to mid-term, and Sri Lanka. We've seen what happened in Sri Lanka. So what we need to do is, as India, there's difference between India and Indians. Indians have reacted emotionally as they always do, which is not a bad thing to do after the tweet by the Maldives ministers and what Maldives has done. But India, I think, has reacted as a government, reacted very responsibly. It's the internal politics what the foreign minister has said, and I think that is the difference we have to make, and we want to project that. And as I see, I recollect on the 3rd of December when we carried out the rescue operation for the Maldivian president, Mr. Gayoom. On the 4th morning when we rescued him, and the first thing he says, I want the civil aviation to start landing, the airfield to be open for civil aviation, because we cannot stop tourism. And the first aircraft or the first flight we landed at Halule was on the 4th evening at 5 o'clock, right? Because everything depended on tourism. And today, Indian tourism is down by about 17 or 18% as I have the figures. So it is going to hurt the Maldives. There's nothing wrong with it, because they should also feel the pain and the consequences, the cost of being this thing. I think 15th March is a very important date. 17th March is the elections for the parliamentary. And as I see it, the president has lost the mayor's seat in Male. So let's see what happens out there while we wait and watch. As far as China is concerned, I think there's very little we can really do at this point of time. The Chinese ship coming there, but looking at the look ahead, what I feel is like you rightly said, you have Gwadar, you have Maldives, you have Hamban Tota. The arc is complete actually, and that is where it's a security concern, a geostrategic concern for India. We should not forget that the Gwadar agreement for 40 years in China-Pakistan Gwadar agreement was signed exactly within 24 hours of President Xi taking over as the Prime Minister. On 14th of March, 13th March, he became the President of China, and on the 14th of March, he signed the Gwadar agreement. So that is what the thought process of Xi Jinping is, and he has been driving this in his third term now. So we'll have to be very careful about it. Coming down to, let me just take a minute more on the Indian options. We need to stay invested in the people of Maldives. Education, medical, and if we have this 77 military personnel, as they call military personnel, they are not military personnel actually. They are basically for the their Coast Guard and for the ANHS who to fly the casualties from one place to other, medical treatment. Let them not be military, let them be civil. So we will have to look at other options also, because it's a sovereign country, and if they want India out, so let us come out of it. Let them face the consequences of it. We already know that a child was, he could have been saved, but he was not saved because he was not evacuated on time. So things like that. So we'll have to look at India needs Maldives, but Maldives also needs India. If you look at history, it is not only 1988 of Cactus Maldives we rescued the president. Later on in tsunami also we were the first responders. We have built a hospital there, which is the India Maldives Friendship Hospital. Halule Airfield itself was built by Engineers India Limited. It was there. JMR was thrown out later on. That's a separate story altogether. If you look at 2014 December of Operation Neer, when the desalination plant in Male was not working, we provided water. So India has to be the first responder, and we should go and IW is very important. Information, let's call it information about what you call it. The people of Maldives should know that what we have done. They should know it is not only when they say India out, military out. Maldivians should know that India has always come out. whether it's 1952 in Nepal, whether it was Sri Lanka 1987, 88, 89, whether Maldives itself in 1988. We went in, and within third of this November 1988, we went in, and by 17th, the major party was out. A detachment was left out there. The request of the president to train the then NSS, which now became the MND, the Maldives National Defense Forces. So I think this has to be put into perspective, and the people of Maldives should know about it. I don't think many people in India know about all this. That India does not have any expansionist ideas. It does not have agenda of expansionism. And whenever we have gone for military aid, we've always come out. The diplomatic military synergy has to be there in this, especially with Maldives. Let us not go overboard, and let's not react. Let's not respond the way we, from a feeling of hurt that they are not grateful and all. Why should they be grateful? They're a sovereign nation. If they wanted help, we help them. That's fine, absolutely. That's how it should be. And we should not be a big brother. But all the same, when we talk of Sagar, we should implement Sagar in letter and spirit and in true spirit. Let's go and help out our region. We want a secure region. And if we want a secure region, we have to take the responsibility of making sure that the region is secure, and as and when needed, we are there for protecting and safeguarding the interests of neighbors. I think I'll finish out here and wait for the next round. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. You made some very relevant and telling points. You spoke of the 4D strategy, which we have discussed earlier. You spoke of a very interesting concept of smart power versus a sharp power of China. And then you also put a very major point which you brought out is India is always out. India is never in. India only goes in for to do a particular task and then comes out. And then we spoke of Sagar. I'll get back to you because I'll be more interested in talking of a little amplification from you on the 4D and the smart power and sharp power. But that will be later. With this, sir, I now request Ambassador Gurjit Singh. Sir, the floor is all yours. Onwards to Maldives.
Thank you, General Shankar. Thank you, dear colleague. Good to be back on Gunner Shot and CASA. When I was a young officer in Sri Lanka, one day we were told that we have to handle Maldives because there was a attempted coup over there through irregulars. That was the first time I understood how strategically important Maldives was, but my attention span did not have to be diverted too much because the Indian Army finished off Cactus rather swiftly. When I was under training, the editor of the Times of India, Girilal Jain, in 1981, told us how the neighborhood was very important. And we as trainee officers challenged him, saying, what can we do in the neighborhood? And we agreed between him and us that India should have a mailed fist. But the mailed fist should not have occasion to be uncovered or used. It should be enough to be perceived. Now we are in 2024. And what do we have? The entire neighborhood, our challenges to us are being accentuated by big power rivalry. Many years ago, we were wary of the Americans. Now we are wary of the Chinese. So this is point number one. You are no more the preeminent power because you are being challenged by other powers for the loyalties of your neighbors. Secondly, people to people and economic diplomacy is the prime motivation to achieve your diplomatic goals of neighborhood first. Without going into too much detail, I would like to say that in the case of Maldives, our people to people and economic diplomacy have been exemplary. Over $1 billion in lines of credit and millions of dollars in grants, thousands of scholarships. There is a people to people arrangement very much in place. How did President Soli not take advantage of this? Other way around, how did Soli lose the election, which was being fought on an anti-India agenda? So, If our people to people relationship, which we are touting as a big success, is really successful, how did a party with an anti Indian outspoken agenda actually win a led election? So, this whole question of people to people relationship needs to be looked at again. Why? Because gratefulness and ungratefulness go hand in hand. You are only as good as your last transaction. There is no permanent gratefulness of a people. That is what is evident from this decision. Certainly, wherever there is democracy, India is now facing greater challenges in the neighborhood. When there was a king in Nepal, perhaps it was easier to deal with him. When there was one family ruling a country, you could deal with them. When you have a dictator in a country, you had a long-standing relation. But the more that they are democratic elections, the more India factor and pointing fingers at India comes into play. Nobody points fingers at China because it is far away. It is India which is visible every day. That is the factor which is being now called upon, whether it is Bangladesh or Nepal or Sri Lanka or Maldives, everywhere you are now being classified as whether are you pro-India, are you anti-India. So India has learned to be quiet and let the domestic politics take their own course. Having said this, can we just sit back and do nothing? The current dispensation, which has unfortunately been chosen by their own people, is now going to try to root out the affection that people of Maldives have for India. Please mark my words. I was looking at the website of the Indian High Commission in Maldives. I cannot see a single picture of a Republic Day reception. And today is the 29th. It's only the flag hoisting ceremony, no reception. Yet, the next attack will come on yoga classes. After that, they will try and curtail the number of people coming to India under the highly successful high-tech program. The number of Maldivians who will be allowed to undertake scholarships in India, of which there are hundreds every year, will sought to be curtailed. These linkages that we have established through effective development cooperation. Development cooperation is economic cooperation with a people-to-people agenda. There will be an effort to uproot it. And for this, China is absolutely supporting the Muizu government. Till last year, when the Maldives foreign minister was the UNGA chairman, look at the closeness we had. What happened since then? Election happened. So, my final point, the culprit seems to be the elections. We need to manage these better. We cannot have anti-Indian forces coming to power using democratic means because that is inimical to our interest. Therefore, red lines have to be set in our neighborhood. You can have relations with China, Bangladesh does. You can have a military relationship with China, Bangladesh does. You can have Chinese economic assistance, Bangladesh does. But give Indian companies a level playing field. Give India security no reason to suspect you. These are the red lines. Don't take offensive positions. But ladies and gentlemen, what is happening in today in Maldives is a breach of all these unsaid red lines. What is India's option? Wait. There is another election coming up. Let us hope that the people-to-people connection will actually come back with sense and sensibility. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made some very interesting points there. And You spoke of people-to-people contact, the requirement of it, and how it has failed. Obviously, it has failed for the situation where we are in. If our people-to-people contact has to generate anti-India feelings, there is something we have to do a rethink about, right? And of course, we'll now see how to get back to it, because the answer to that is probably in your opening remarks when you said this, you spoke of the iron fist with the velvet glove. I'll get back to it, how to operationalize this concept, because that's the best concept you have with countries around us. Right. With this, I'd like to turn to Brigadier Rumel Dahiya. So, your take on the whole situation and your view of what India's options are. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Um, I'll just try and take two fundamental issues into consideration. One is the geography. The second, of course, is the history, particularly the history of last century. Now, the geography has some influences on how Maldives behaves. It is about 1,200 islands, about 200 of them being inhabited. Besides Malé and Addu, about 20 atolls, which is an atoll is a group of islets, so a couple of them grouped together. And the political system is that Malé has its number of MPs coming to the National Majlis, as they call it, Maldivian Majlis, National Parliament, and all others have, of course, at least two, but in some cases more than two, depending on the population, more than two MPs coming to the Majlis, with the total number of Majlis MPs being 87. Now, the southernmost three islands, Addu being one of them, but also the bigger one is Huadu Atoll. Huadu Atoll has been the most advanced atoll amongst all. And if you remember, the United Swadwe Republic was established based on Huadu, Addu Atoll, and Formula, these three southernmost ones. The gap between the atolls is the largest between Huadu and the rest of the Maldivian atolls. And 1.5 degree channel passes through that. So that not only increases the distance, but also quite a lot of shipping goes through that. Now, these three islands had separated from Maldives in 1958, when Maldives was still a protectorate under the British. And some people say that since Ghan International Airfield was basically that time was a Royal Air Force base, they wanted it to be separated from the rest of the Maldives because they were losing the colonies, and ultimately they wanted to keep control over it, like they have some control over the airfield in Cyprus. So they wanted to keep it like that. But fact also is that its geography makes it difficult to hold together unless there is some cementing force. And that's the reason I'm just jumping to the present for just to make one point, that Muizu just started the process of introducing nationalism as one of the subjects in middle and high schools. And the first classes have started now for the 11th class in Maldives. So this process of nationalism has been going on for a long time. And this process actually started with President Ibrahim Nasir, who was Prime Minister first when Maldives became independent in 1965, and then became a president in 1968 till 1978 when he voluntarily retired. And it was he who established Malé Airfield, gave voting rights to women, made tourism as the backbone of industry, established health centers, and he was really not only a hero of independence, but hero of modern Maldives, actually a father of modern Maldives. Now, I now come to the point that besides this geographical issue is also a question of the nature of politics in Maldives. The nature of politics in Maldives is so fractious that no president or head of state who has been there in power has gone away with his reputation intact and without cases being foisted against him. President Soli is the first one who has behaved in a very dignified manner handed over power once he lost the election, and has not been hounded so far. But he has not been hounded so far primarily because MDP has had humongous, sort of a huge majority in the Majlis. Recently, of course, 14 of their MPs have defected and joined Muizu's party PNC. But still, both MDP and the Democrats, which is a breakaway faction under Nasheed from MDP, they both still combined, they have a majority of 56. And that's the reason why they have today denied affirmation of 3 ministers to the cabinet. They have denied them. They are not the minister. They have not become ministers. They've denied them. Despite yesterday's fracas that we were mentioning, I think Muizu also realized that if he does this, then people might turn against him. So the politics is so. Let me give you one more example of fractious politics over there. The President Gayoom, whom General Bhatia and his team, they had gone and sort of saved his life. He has a couple of children, and one of his child was Dunia Mamoon, who was minister under Yamin, and who's presently also have been speaking in favor of Muizu, but she's absolutely opposed to her own real brother, Ghassan Mamoon, who is the defense minister now. So it's so mixed up. The politics is so mixed up and so fractious that nobody knows who's supporting whom. But having said that, what Muizu is trying to do is basically because of the leadership proclivities. This is the third point that I'm making. The leaders have behaved in a different manner. Yamin always made a mention of developmental assistance coming from other places, and he did not mention security at all anywhere, which means that he was trying to not poke India in the eye by mentioning security, that he's trying to compromise India's security. He was doing all that in the name of developmental assistance coming from anywhere that he could get. But the underlying factor was that his own proclivity of being undemocratic, of being autocratic, had something to do with his affinity to the Chinese. It's also a fact, of course, that not only he, but most of his officials, including the foreign secretary and a couple of ministers, were on Chinese payroll that time. They were fully under Chinese influence, and they were on their payroll, actually. And I have it from a very, very reliable source to say that the foreign secretary was literally eating out of their hands. It was compromised in more than one way, not just finances, but even otherwise. And Muizu also, although it will sound like a conspiracy theory, but Muizu was housing minister under Yamin, and that's the time when Chinese had invested lots of money in Mali and other places. So one never knows if he also has that kind of a thing. But his father was an Islamic scholar. In any case, he was a Maulvi, and therefore it is not just affinity to Chinese, but also the religious inclination of the people. And as you know, that in 2008 Constitution, that time President Mamoon had introduced certain measures that only Muslims can get citizenship in Maldives, nobody else can. That the parliament, the Majlis, cannot pass any rule which is not in conformity with Islamic tenets, and that the judiciary will make decisions on matters of law based on Maldives constitution, but where there's no specific provision exists, the decision will be taken in line with Sharia's tenets. So that means Islam is fully, very well into the system, very much into the system, and that makes that some people who are democratic, like Mr. Soli was democratic, Nasheed was democratic. Nasheed was treated very badly from his childhood, and when in 2008 he became a president, he was the first fully democratically elected president. He was the one. He has always behaved like that. Soli has very well conducted himself as a true Democrat, and that also gives the reason why these two gentlemen were more aligned to India, because of their proclivity. The proclivity was that. I mean, they were more democratic by nature, so they were more aligned to India's thing. Now, there are positive signs that are coming out of this politics. I was just listening to a gentleman called Qasim Ibrahim, Qasim Ibrahim had fought elections when Nasheed fought against Mamoon Gayoom in 2008, and he came third in the first thing, but with sizable vote. He's chairman of Jamhuri Party. He has said very clearly. He said that President Muizu must apologize to India. That India has been our closest friend. That the harebrained schemes like Asanda. Asanda is that medical insurance thing like Ayushman Bharat, as per which so far the Maldivian citizens can take treatment in any Indian medical facility, and the Maldivian government will bear the expenses of that. It's something like Ayushman Bharat. So Maldives now Muizu now says that he will open it up that the people can go to Bangkok and people can go to UAE, Dubai, etc. And it will not only just be India which is going to do it. But an extremely important point that we must bear in mind is this, that we have also slipped up somewhere in our diplomacy. And that diplomacy is not in not giving scholarships to students. 1,000 scholarships are open for them. About 175 odd Maldivian National Defense Forces people are coming here for training every year. There are huge lot of things that have been done. But it seems to me that Muizu, when he was mayor of Malé, was never given that importance. And he carries that in mind. You must have seen these videos going around now on social media. When Muizu went to China recently on his first visit, Xi Jinping himself conducting him for the ceremonial welcome. Now, one might say that this is just a protocol, head of state being treated by head of state. But if you see the body language, if you see everything, this was all meant to give Muizu a feeling that China is treating him very, very importantly, and I'm considering him very important and all that. And Muizu, I don't think when he was Malay governor that he was given that power. And there lies the same. In my second part, I'll be able to bring out, because thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you brought out some very interesting points about the past of Maldives, when the Adu Atoll and the surrounding area even declared independence to be a separate state with a separate flag. It's also on record that USSR wanted to establish a base out there, which I did mention, and they brought a spy ship, like very much like the spy ship today. There's a spy ship of USSR which was brought there, and it stayed in this Adu Atoll for quite some time. Well, that's history. From there to now, fractious politics and anti-India story. We'll come back to you on this later. Right. I'll get back to General Bhatia. Sir, my question to you is this. You spoke of 4D strategy and smart power versus sharp power. If you could kindly elucidate, how do you see this 4D strategy being put into operation smartly in Maldives?
I think that's the key issue. When you talk of smart power, we have to understand Maldivian needs. One, remain invested in the people, because we want to look at not the immediate term, but the near to mid term and the long term. And it is important to stay invested in the people of Maldives. Continue with what you're doing good for them, medical, education, tourism. But look at the other things. Most of the Maldives is going to go, with the climate change, is going to go underwater. So what they're doing is, all the islands have been created, so they're rising the levels to one to 2 meters. So where does the cement, the steel, the waste, where does it go from? The two nearest places are Colombo, which is about 800 kilometers, and Tuticorin, which is about 750, 60 kilometers, right? So what you do is, all these things, you either make them not available, or you put such a cost to them, because they cannot get it from China. Well, imagine they try to get everything from China. It will be very, very costly for them. Can they afford it? They'll go under debt. So that is where I think when you say smart power, look at the economic thing and look at things which are not very visible, but which are essential, all the same. So Maldives, number of projects are coming in Maldives. Uh, I've seen it in the change. I've seen the changes since the late 80s, 88 onwards. I've been there a couple of times, more than a couple of times rather. And big projects are coming. And where are they sourced from? The resource is sourced from India. That's the closest actually. So let them get it from, if they want to send people to Dubai for medical treatment, let them send. There's no harm in it whatsoever. Why should we bother about it? But we should, when we say smart power, we should look at the essential needs, which does not really come into the limelight with the people, but which hurts the dispensation which is there, which hurts the present government which is anti-India. The present government is anti-India. Let's have a look. They're not pro-China. They're anti-India. There's India out was the campaign. It was not pro-China, right? So they're definitely being pro-China and being anti-India. So we should make sure that this anti-India feeling of the present dispensation is played against them, and they cannot do for the people what they promised. That is how it's very important when he says India out by 15th of March. Why? Because 17th of March is the elections with the parliament election 17th of March. So he wants to say that he's done that. So let them bear the cost somewhere else. So it's a smart power. It has to be a synergized power of diplomacy, military, economics, information. The time comes into being. And I think that is some place we need to really be very, very sharp, very smart, and play and synergize the campaigns. So we have an overall plan, and we executed all these fields. So that is where I think smart power, sharp power, of course, we are not into sharp power. We should not be also. China, of course, sharp power. China doesn't bother with anyone. Sharp power actually means, simply put, in simple terms, is either you're with me or you're against me. Right? That's sharp power. And that's what China has been doing all along. So that's the Chinese way. But that's not our way. Our way would be a smart power. Smart power is a mix of these things. When you talk of 4D strategy, when you say deny space to China in the neighborhood, I think that's very important. Honestly, I don't know whether a neighborhood first policy is really working or not. I don't think it's not working. Let's be the way things are. We need to review it. We're going to look inwards also. When you look inwards, in my little experience, I'm not a diplomat. But I have visited our neighborhood countries, fortunately all of them. And once you start talking to people, they always feel that we are high on promises, low on delivery. Right? So that perception has to change. That is one. Secondly, the projects which they want, they think that India forces certain projects on them. Of course, we look after national interest. There's no doubt about it. But that is only the security domain. What is there for the public good? We could actually, we could deliver like we did in Afghanistan. I think Afghanistan is something which could replicate in the neighborhood. Even Taliban today acknowledges that India has done a great job in enlisting the people of Afghanistan. The same thing we should be seen in our neighborhood also. Sri Lanka, of course, realizes it now, and there's a similar feeling out there in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh also. I think the BNP started off a India out campaign and learning from the Maldivian things. So this is like a wildfire. If we don't put a stop to it right now, we'll be losing our neighborhood. So denying space in the neighborhood to China is a second stage. I think first we should actually consolidate on what space we already have, and then start. The denial will come later on because we seem to be losing out the space we already had invested for so many years. So there has to be a rethought, and all elements of national power have to come together. It cannot be only diplomatic, it cannot be only economic, it cannot be only commerce. But we should have a focused approach and see how we can maximize our leverages. We have to have leverages, and how can we maximize the leverages without hurting the sentiments of the people?
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made some very important points of putting a cost on the Indian aid to Maldives, and you need to hurt the government and not the people. So that whole story needs a lot of fine tuning, whether it's diplomatic, whether it's governmental, whether it's political, or whether it's aid related. And I do agree with you, and what Mr. Gurjit Singh also said. Are we doing enough? Is something which we have to introspect very seriously. Right. With that, sir, I'll thank you. And now I'll request Ambassador Gurjit Singh. You did speak of the iron fist with the velvet glove, and especially when we are not the preeminent power in that area. Could you expand on that, sir? And what do we need to do in the current situation?
So, I think the Maldives is the classic case which felt the velvet glove of India. In 1988, Op Cactus, the tsunami, the water crisis, the measles outbreak. Actually, we are the best friend Maldives has in all practical ways. And I enumerated some of their, relationship with India at the popular level in terms of training, education. Brides come to India to shop, the tourism benefits. It is almost like an immaculate relationship, and yet it did not work. All these relationships have to be converted to political influence. Now, that is where the glove works. You have a velvet glove, which is all the development cooperation, and then the hand opens and grasps you. And that grasp is a firm grasp, which stands by you when you need me and will hold you when you try to evade my grasp. That part is never said. But today the time is gone where you could march an army in, or do a coup or stuff like that, which the Americans used to do. India has never done that. But today, Maldives is poking us in the eye deliberately. The statement by their minister, this constant ramification about India, this reminds me of President Premdasa, who as prime minister used to speak like this to basically rile you. So I think the Indian government has acted well with maturity. I don't think it is a matter today of what the Indian government will stop doing, but more what the Maldivian government will prevent its people from engaging with India. That is the challenge. But you cannot overcome this easily, just as you cannot say, why is the Chinese research ship visiting you? This is going to become a practice. You have to find ways and means that within Maldives itself, people prefer to hold your velvet glove rather than the Chinese fist and say, I want to hold this hand. That is your challenge that you must keep. Thank you.
Good.
Thanks a lot, sir. I couldn't agree with you more in the way you have articulated the business of a velvet glove and the iron fist. The challenge is how to execute it. Especially since after all this velvet glove, we've used only the velvet glove on which from where the grip has slipped off. Right? That's the biggest challenge for our political and diplomatic outreach. And dare say, I would dare say, it's not the diplomacy which has not worked here, it's the political outreach which has failed. For the simple reason, probably we never saw it coming, right? For whatever reason. Okay. Now, with this kind of a thing, let me speak on the politics itself. Brigadier Dahiya did mention that the election for the Majlis is going to come up on 17th. Even if we do get a majority, or rather a party which is, I wouldn't say pro-India, which is not anti-India, does get a majority out there. Do you think with this kind of a thing where the president is completely anti-India and the parliament is probably a little pro-India, things can get balanced out in, uh, in Maldives? Your views, sir.
Thank you. I think just one thing which was left out earlier was I just wanted to give an example of a personal proclivity and personal favors. There was a gentleman called Amr Musa. He was Secretary of Arab League for 10 years, and he was Foreign Minister for another 10 years of Egypt. And before that, he was Ambassador in India.
And he had a problem with regard to his car, duty-free export and that kind of a thing. Now, he wasn't a big man like Modi who forgot about the slights of denial of visa by US. He probably carried that thing in his mind, and when he was the foreign minister of Egypt, he literally put the Indo-Egypt relationship on a freeze. So individual issues, individual proclivities carry a great weight in relationships between countries. So therefore, we must be worried about leadership. Connected with it is two mistakes we seem to have made, and Chinese have not made in Maldives. One, that after Chinese supported and Chinese favoring President Yamin lost the election, Chinese never lost contact with other politicians in Maldives. They remained in touch with MDP, they remained in touch with Nasheed himself, even after he separated from MDP to form Democrats. They remained in touch with Muizu and all other people. So they were very active. We probably, after Soli's dispensation took charge, we forgot about Yamin and forgot about others. That was one mistake that we made. And Muizu himself was not taken seriously at all. Second mistake that we did was that agreements that we signed with them, many of them, making their defense headquarters, making their Coast Guard base, and a couple of other such agreements, they were never discussed in Parliament, and therefore there was lack of transparency, which was made use of by the opposition. Remember, opposition made use of 2-3 things. When yoga sort of day was held, they said it is anti-Islamic. So they brought in that. Lack of transparency and therefore compromise with the nation's sovereignty was another issue that came about. Certain degree of inefficiency because, and not just efficiency, probably bad luck of COVID, interfering very severely with their economic development and causing hardships to the people. That also was combined along with it. And then, of course, the fractious politics that people were ready to sell their soul to the highest bidder. As you know, that the resort owners and all that exercise undue influence in the background, they exercise a lot of influence. But please remember that Yamin, who was absolutely anti-Indian, Yamin, who got lots of money, even though loan, which is now an overhang on their economy from China, but despite that, nobody expected him to lose the last election, and yet he lost. So what's the lesson that one draws from it? That the people's impressions, people's perceptions are not fixed. You are very right in saying that the 17th March elections may come as a shock to Muizu. However, like for example, the example of now 56 MPs now saying that Muizu should be impeached. I doubt he'll be impeached for the simple reason that out of these 56, some of them will be sold off, or some of them will abstain from the parliamentary debate, because that's the nature of politics. The loyalties are not firm. Second thing is that three seats to Jamhuri Party, PNC has already said that we will not fight against your candidates. Similarly, they are trying to come to an arrangement with other smaller parties where they'll leave 2, 3, 4 seats to each one of them. So that the main goal is what? The main goal is that MDP and Democrats, who are now coming together again, they should not be getting into majority. Now, you know that it's like American system, with slight changes. The presidential form of government, where he is the head of state and head of government, but he and vice president both are elected not on the same. They're elected on the same ticket, but the voting is done separately. Which means that even if the president is impeached, the vice president automatically takes over. So that's their system. Now the ministers are appointed by him, and if they are MPs, they stop being MPs if they are appointed as ministers. And the president is not answerable to the parliament to that extent. But still, some bills, etc., have to go to parliament to be passed. And there can be kind of a gridlock over there where the parliament can come in the way. My feeling is this, and my recommendation is this. that we must keep quiet till 17th of March in any case. Because whatever we say or do can be exploited by Muizu and his party to show to the people that India is interfering in their internal affairs. And therefore, this quiet approach I think, is the right approach to be taken till 17th of March. Beyond that, irrespective of what the results are, we should not have a visible hand like we had to, in the case of Bangladesh, our hand was forced by Americans, forced by BNP, forced by so many people, wherein we had to openly come in support of Sheikh Hasina. Over there we don't have to, but we know where our heart lies. And the people who, Soli and Nasheed and all these people, they understand as to where our heart lies, and so there's no doubt in their minds and all that. But I'm also sure that when the time comes to repay the loans of the Chinese, I'm sure will roll over some of the loans for some time, but not forever. If you remember, in 2020, when the COVID was rampaging everywhere else, not a single Chinese tourist went to Maldives, but 63,000 Indians went there in 2020. This is something to be noted, that when the chips are down, the Chinese will not be seen around. It will be the Indians who will be seen around. So after the elections, I also have a feeling that even if Muizu's party wins a narrow majority, they are not going to have a super majority that he's talking about 62 seats out of 87. He's never going to get that. But even if, let's say, he gets majority, realism will set in. He cannot just go and go. You remember that before China came on the scene, it was Saudi Arabia that was helping Maldives. And that's what, of course, Islamized them. I mean, they were giving the money to them. Now Saudi Arabia is no more there in the corner. Turkey itself doesn't have much to give, actually. They can't be giving him wheat by importing it from Ukraine and then passing it on to Maldives. They can't be doing that. So therefore, the realism will set in after the elections. Himself might moderate his reactions, and things are not gone out of our hands at all. So the geography makes sure that Maldives is not going to go anywhere, irrespective of the dire forecast that people might make. Thank you.
Okay, I think you made a lot of valid points. The geography will not let Maldives go far away because political positions might change, but the island won't change. It will still remain there only. Right. And then, of course, the fact is that, politics is something which is well known to India. And, the kind of info war which we conduct during our own politics or political struggles or political, actions which go on in India, which is almost 24/7. If some part of that info war is turned on to Maldives, it'll do a whole lot of us a lot of good. In fact, I've always wondered, with such a fantastic info war campaign each of our political party runs. I mean, it is absolutely out of the box and very illuminative and highly entertaining. Also, all of us experience it to get our votes. How is it that India doesn't have a good infowar system externally? Internally, we are so good at it. And how is it that all our ministers who get elected suddenly, stop playing this infowar game? Well, that's a debate for another day. I'll take a few questions on. The first question is someone who wants to step into my footstep as a future DG artillery. He's asking General Bhatia, how do you feel when the country you and your men literally saved from a coup, having the highest pro rata terror recruitment in the world, and fact that today they hate our country so much? Your view, sir.
I suppose we did an excellent job, and for some time, till President Gayoom was there, honestly, the government and the people are very friendly. They're very grateful. But then everything has got a timeline to it. You cannot just keep saying that we did it once. It is the same thing which happened in Bangladesh, 71, liberation of Bangladesh. And then we had, within 4 years or 5 years, Bangladesh going anti-Indian. Fortunately, the BNP not come back in power. So we should not expect that, it's a lifelong thing. That was an extent operation. We did the job we were supposed to do. And mind you, President Gayum had requested not India, but the US, the USSR at that point of time, and even Pakistan for help. It's only India which reacted, and within 16 hours we finished our operation. So it's and without a single casualty to the body, there's no collateral damage whatsoever. So that was it. But I suppose there is a limit to being grateful. People have short memories, everyone has short memories and all. So we should not expect that, but we should remain invested. The point is that we should remain invested. And at the same time, that Mutt and Jeff thing happens. We talk something and make sure that the dispensation pays for it. Like I said, everything goes from India actually over there because we're the closest. The construction activities. There's so many islands which are resorts now. Where does the construction material come from? Where does the construction labor come from? Where the workers come from? Mostly India. So if they want to source this from all over the world, look at the cost that will go up. And today it's all a question of what cost. And if they cannot afford the cost, then we have leverages over them. So you have to be smart enough to make sure that the leverages are known to them, the cost and consequences are known to them. And we should also, keep reminding them that it is not only 1988. Tomorrow you have again a problem out there. We are the nearest, and we'll come and we have the capacity with the capabilities, and Sagar is our national policy will come and help out. But also in times of HADR, in terms of any need, whatever you want, we will be there. China is too far away. China cannot come and if you think the Chinese are going to come, even in 1988. The US fleet from Degogacia moved in on late on the fourth evening. Right? And they were still about 4 to 5 hours sailing time away from Mali. Because I received that call that they were 4 to 5 hours, and I know that as a fact. And then we told them, okay, keep sailing, and if you want, if required, we'll later to come in, but everything is normal out here. So I think we should not get perturbed about that they're not grateful anymore. But we should look at the future, look at the way we need to get them back into our fold, if not immediately, right, but little later.
Thank you, sir. The next question, Ambassador Gurjit, is from Akash. He says, given the underlying ideological dysfunctionality and present visible outcome in Maldives, Bharat would need to substantially increase its hard power and set some examples. Your views. And the last part is the most important. Should we set some examples? And if so, how? Your views, sir.
Thank you. So this hard power is again the mailed fist. So I cannot tell you examples of how a mailed fist is used. I mean, you have to use it in many different ways. But to be honest, this hit and run strategy doesn't work anymore. So hard power, if any, essentially is dependence. That is the hardest power, that if you are dependent on us for something. But I put it to you, supposing there is a tsunami in Maldives during this period, will India not rush to help them? Unlikely. So this is the tyranny of geography and the anarchy of democracy in our neighborhood. You have to deal with them. So I'm afraid hard power has limitations, just as soft power has limitations. If you are a distant country, you can say, okay, I don't care, I will reduce my relationship with you. You can't do it to a neighbor. We tried a blockade in Nepal some years ago. Did it lead to positive results? So there are limitations of geography. We have to be patient, carry on with diplomacy, and hope that the love of the people of Maldives will express itself in more visible way. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, sir, completely. As you are speaking and what we had discussed earlier, a point came to my mind that we have to put a cost to the aid which we are giving, and Maldives economy depends a lot on these resorts, and these resorts are all not owned by Maldivians but from outside people. So I think the Maldivians, the resort owners and the ownership and all these, have a lot of links with India because most of their visualization would have to come from India only. So I don't know whether we're playing this card well because that's a hard fist in a velvet glove. It can move in unobtrusively. And the pressure from internally through their economy that look, let's not be so angry towards India is something which we'll have to see. Maybe someone has already working on it, but I just thought I'll put it in. Okay. Uh, Now, the third question which I have is I think religious politics in India plus Western propaganda about Muslim persecution is one reason Maldivians bought into the anti India campaign. Your comment, Dahiya sir, all yours.
There is no doubt that there is a kind of religious inclination in Maldives because, sorry, because uh, education, despite President Ibrahim Nasir starting English education over there, a very large section of population undergoes Quranic education in school from earlier times. A very large number of students actually do not want to come to India to study under scholarship that is being taken on by those who are seeking, let's say, vocational training, engineering, etc. But those who are wanting to study humanities, etc., they would like to go to Europe, particularly UK and America, and some of them have now started going to Turkey, and some to UAE, etc. So there is that Islamic element, there's no doubt about it. It's there. And reaction to the Yoga Day celebrations was a typical example of how religious sentiments could be exploited for political reasons. But despite having said that, there hasn't been a major reaction against what's happening in India or because of the propaganda that's happening in India. I was myself very concerned about this issue, but last March when I went on a holiday to Maldives with the family, and I mean, like, that's how I do that. Wherever I go, I also try and make use of the time to interact with people, find out about how they feel about various things. And so there also I tried to find out from people. I never got a feeling that this anti-India feelings because of religious persecution of Muslims in India. That's probably because many of these Maldivians who have been traveling to India, particularly to Kerala, which is the nearest, of course, I think don't get that feeling of persecution of Muslims at all. And Kerala, for example, is the finest example where Muslims feel themselves empowered rather than feeling sort of persecuted. So that is not the thing at all. But however, it's a mix of things. Like there's a word in English called gestalt. Gestalt is an undefined kind of a combination of various factors, which singly do not create such a wave, but when all put together, create a mass which can create some kind of a disturbance. So therefore, religious feelings once in a while, India's overbearing attitude in some places, the neglect of some opinion makers, then lack of transparency in some matters, all these things combined together create some kind of a feeling. Now here I'll just give you 30 seconds of citing an anecdote about what General Shankar was saying about Indian politicians not being used. When Mr. Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister and Bhajanlal had just come over to Congress with the whole lot of people. So somebody wanted to, crack a joke at the cost of Bhajanlal when they met. So somebody said, Mr. Fotodar or somebody said in presence of Bhajanlal, that Mr. Prime Minister, you were thinking of sending Mr. Bhajanlal to Israel. Bibi Netanyahu at that time was short of a few MPs there for forming a government. So Rajiv Gandhi said, Bhajanlal ji, आप गए नहीं इजराइल, तो वो किस लिए वहाँ पे उनको जरूरत है आपकी वहाँ पे कुछ MPs खरीदे. अच्छा जी मुझे तो नहीं मालूम था, पता होता तो चला जाता. So Indian politicians haven't gone there because probably the diplomats don't let them come in there, so that they don't go and spoil the show for them. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your views. I'd like to welcome Jayashree Rao as a member. I'll not take any more questions, sir. I think we've overshot the time and we're Okay, and otherwise we could keep going on. I thought overall we had some very good views. We need to do more. One thing which comes out is this shift from being pro India to anti India has not happened overnight. Let's be very clear about it. It has happened uh, over a period of time and probably very deliberately. And at some point of time, we have been insensitive to the people and we have not reached out to the people the way we should have. We thought we were reaching out to the people when someone else was reaching out to the people, actually, and that's how the whole story is. In a way, and one. Number two, all is not lost. As we've seen, from being anti India XYZ to facing problems running the country, things are going bad. After all, Muizu has lost the mayoral election, that Majlis election is going to come up, and things are not going to be easy. And just because China has got a president here for the next 5 years who is pro-China, doesn't mean that China will, regain everything and we lose space. We still have the space. We have to rethink our way of how to do things. After all, we've also weathered 5 years of Abdullah and ultimately succeeded, like it was brought out. The people threw him out, and he got himself into the jail and completely disqualified from elections also or running for any post. So all is not lost, but we need a rethink. And we need a rethink not only for Maldives, I think we need a rethink for the entire region, right? Uh, just yesterday, I put out a video where we said, look, the, the traditional 2.5 front of a China front, a Pakistan front, and an internal half a front has vanished, the way I look at it. There are new fronts coming which confront India as India rises. And I think we need to start thinking differently. And this front in Maldives is not going to run away. It's going to be there. It was dormant so far, but as India becomes a greater power, we need to have a rethink of it. And I request General Gautam Murthy sir and others in the panel, please have a look at that video which I posted today on CASA also. And maybe sometime in our next webinar, we think of this new fronts which are confronting India and not stick to that old formulation of 2.5 front, which I think is outdated. With this, I hand you over to General Gautam Murthy. So please wrap it up and all yours.
Thank you very much, General Shankar, and thank you, panelists. We've had a marvelous discussion and some very important takeaways. I would just like, in conclusion, to highlight one aspect of it, which not only pertains to Maldives but across the neighborhood. We spoke about red lines. We spoke about cultivating, the politicians across party lines in all these countries. And one aspect that we must bring out through politically and diplomatically is that, for God's sake, in your political battles with each other, you cannot use India as a football. Keep India out of your political battles. You've got other issues to take on your opposition parties, to take on each other. And that is one message that should go strongly to Maldives and to the others. That's what General Shankar had mentioned, that, somewhere we've been lacking. And I think this is one part where we've probably been lacking to across, because in any country, an opposition party can come to power. It is a democracy after all, not only Maldives, Nepal, Bangladesh, they're all democracies, including Pakistan, I would say. But this is the point that we must remember and we must work on. Thank you all very much.
So one point before you
Yes.
go, he's left us with a thought. Maybe they should have perpetual existential crisis as part of our mailed face strategy.
I saw
It's
that.
something, yeah, it's emotional. I mean, it just tells you how emotional people feel and how betrayed people feel, right? So I just thought I'll put this view across.
Yes.
I couldn't stop myself. Sorry, sir. Yeah, please.
No. Thank you, General Bhatia. Thank you, Ambassador Gurjit. Thank you, Brigadier Rupel. And above all, thank you, General Shankar, for this wonderful program and for moderating it. And thank you, the audience, for your patience and for listening into what I found was a very stimulating and interesting discussion. Thank you all, and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind and
Thank you,
good
Jai.
evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.